All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is December 26th, 2021. You're now watching Real Talk with Ronnie live. So, first of all, I just like to wish everybody a very, very Merry Christmas. This is our post Christmas show, and I'm so happy that you can all join us tonight. You're probably wondering why I'm wearing this red jacket. Well, this red jacket, I've had this jacket and I've never really had a chance to wear it. So I thought, why don't I wear it tonight to celebrate Christmas, right? Because the colors of Christmas are red and green. So I figured I'd wear it. I would wear it tonight, and also just to give you guys a little update. My wife had our second boy on the 22nd, which was exactly his due date. So actually, on the 21st, which was my birthday, we spent most of that day in the hospital. That's when she started to feel the a little bit of movement there. So the contractions were coming up and they were getting closer and closer. So on my birthday night, we checked into the hospital in Hackensack. And by the way, the staff and doctors there did a phenomenal job. And I want to thank them so much for helping me and my wife and our baby get through this smoothly and safely. They did a phenomenal job. So thank you to Hackensack University Medical Center for their fine and pristine service. Okay, so yep, my baby was born on the 22nd. He came right on time. He was estimated to be due on the 22nd, and he showed up on the 22nd. So that was such fantastic news, and honestly, that was the best birthday present that I could ever get. I was hoping that we'd share the same birthday, that he'd come a couple of hours sooner, but he decided that he wanted to have his own birthday. So that's all good. So we're very happy about that. My wife did a fantastic job. Our first child was born through C-section. So they said that, it's typically difficult to give the second child, to give birth to the second child via the natural way. But lo and behold, that's what she did. She was a trooper. She gave birth to my second boy, um, you know, um, through the natural way. And yep, so everything is good, and God is good, and we're all very, very happy. So on tonight's show, I'm happy to bring you a very good friend of mine, Mr. Darius Mayfield. Darius Mayfield is running for Congress in District 12 here in Jersey. He is a businessman, a philanthropist, an activist, an all around great guy. And right now, he is in the race. He is the Republican candidate for Congress in District 12, which is currently occupied by the incumbent Democrat um, uh, Bonnie Watson Coleman. So Darius hopes to get the chance to get the nomination next year in 22 and take her on. So let's bring on my good friend, Mr. Mayfield. Hello, Darius. So nice to see you. Merry
Hey,
Christmas.
good to see you too, Ron. And again, congratulations on the birth of your son, man. I know that's special. So congratulations. You're a real patriot and a trooper for being here, because I know it just happened a couple of days ago, but we appreciate you and all you do.
Thank you. Well, the show must go on, right? So,
Absolutely. You know how
and
it goes.
yep. And I'm very happy because, my boy, he's currently, so far, he's been an angel. He's been sleeping and resting and not really causing a lot of havoc, except for that first night when we brought him home. He kept us up until 12 in the afternoon. So,
Oh, from what I hear, don't count your chickens yet.
yep. But I want to thank you for coming on. Oh, we have a few comments from Diana. Oh, congratulations. Welcome to the world, Ron Jr. Yeah, if you guys don't know, I named my son Ronald Jr. We have a comment from Ramon. Congratulations. Thank you, Ramon and Diana.
Ramon.
These are two great people. Yeah. This guy, I see him everywhere, right? I don't believe he lived in Bergen County, but he was up in Bergen County like for all my fundraisers, for everything. And I'm sure you've seen him around too, right, Darius?
Yeah, I thought he was running for governor this year, honestly, the way he was moving up and down the state.
Right. All right. So Darius, thank you first of all for coming on post Christmas. I know that you also have a podcast, right? That's usually on 8 o'clock on Sunday nights, right? But you were actually away, right? You were away in, I believe, in Arizona for the Turning Point conference, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
we were out there. We were lucky enough for the podcast to be picked to be on Media Row out there, Not Black, Not White American podcast. So we're very thankful to Charlie and his team for doing that. But we were out in Phoenix, Arizona for about 5 days. And man, it was just, first of all, I've never been to Arizona before, so it was an incredible experience. The mountains out there, just the landscape and the scenery was something like I've never seen in real life before. It was really beautiful. And I got to tell you, Charlie Kirk and his team over at Turning Point, they did a heck of a job, man. When I walked into that auditorium for the first time and saw the audience out there, it literally had to be like 5,000 to 10,000 people jammed into that one auditorium, and they were there for every talk like clockwork. So thank you guys for having us out there, and we had an amazing experience.
Wow. Okay, great. Now, were you actually out there during Christmas?
No. I couldn't do that to my girl here, man. I had to be home for Christmas.
Right.
But I got back on the 23rd, I believe, 2 days ago. Yeah,
Okay.
3 days ago now. And was able to get back out here, spend Christmas with my love, Saudia, and, did Christmas dinner, exchange a gift, all that stuff. So, yeah, I wouldn't have missed Christmas for it. Absolutely not.
Right. And plus, I think Christmas in Arizona would be a little bit different, right? Because there's no snow out there.
Absolutely. But the funny thing is, it was a lot colder than we were expecting while we were out there, man. Especially at night. They had warned us that in the desert at night, it gets really cold. It literally dropped into like the 40s, 30s at night out there. So thankfully, I brung some jackets. But yeah, it would have been a much different Christmas than being out here, even though we didn't really get any snow. But it definitely feels like winter with the weather, of course.
Yep. We have a comment here from Ramon again. Hi, Darius.
What's up, Ramon?
All right. So Darius Mayfield. So why don't you give us a little rundown about your background?
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for having me. I am originally born, raised, and bred in the state of New Jersey. So I'm a Jersey boy to the core. As you have on the screen, I was born in St. Peter's Hospital in New Brunswick, New Jersey in 1985. And that's why I also resided in New Brunswick in something called the New Apartments. For those that don't know, the New Apartments are those brick apartments over there on Commercial Ave and Route 18, which when I was growing up used to be right across the streets from the actual projects, which were like 20, 30-story buildings that were across the street from us. And, it was a very urban neighborhood, a lot of drugs, a lot of crime, a lot of homelessness, a lot of different things. I remember stories like me picking up bags of cash under the green little electrical box in the front yard and bringing it to my mom. And she's like, "What the hell are you doing? Take that back." It's drug money I had, grabbed. I still got a scar on my hand in the middle here from playing basketball in the front yard football, when I was probably like 7 or 8 years old, and I fell, got tackled, and my hand went right into a razor on the ground, a drug razor. So I still have that scar. So, it was tough, but it made me the man I am today, obviously coming from such humble beginnings. Mm-hmm. Just off that spirit, one thing I just want to say to people as they get to know me over this next year, I do come from very humble beginnings. I am a very humble person. I consider myself a regular person, like almost 99.9% of the people I interact with on a daily basis. I come from the business world, the automotive industry, to, building some of my own businesses. And again, at the end of the day, I'm just a regular people. And I think right now we're in a time where more people want regular people to run for office. And this has honestly been a vision of mine forever, because like most people, I always thought to myself, like, why do we have these people leading us that, are obviously so disconnected from the everyday man and woman? People that go into these high places and they go in there, in some cases broke like an AOC, and they come out rich like a Nancy Pelosi worth hundreds of millions of dollars, So, like everyone, my mind was just always like, why are we not putting people like you and me, in these positions to represent us? Because we deal with the people on a daily basis. It even comes to the racism argument. I hear so many of our elected officials, every day talking about how this is racist, that is racist, and really just putting the racism thing on people's mind. But what I like to ask people is, when you go about your everyday life, when you go to work, when you go to the supermarket, when you go to the laundromat, when have you dealt with racism? Do you deal with that on a daily basis? Do you see that every day? Does somebody come up to you and call you derogatory terms when you're walking down the aisle in the supermarket? And the answer is every time, overwhelmingly, no. People don't deal with that on a daily basis, nor is it something that we have to think about on a daily basis. But because of the actions of our elected officials, because of the actions of our irresponsible media, that is something that is now being drilled into the conscious of people. And people that, wouldn't normally think about those things, or even, really want to think about those things or react to them, because, my generation, like I always like to say, is the freest generation ever lived. We didn't have to deal with a lot of those things growing up. I lived in the hood, as I was saying, was born and bred in the hood. Luckily, I had a mother that created one of my number one issues for me and my sister, and that's school choice, right? So I think it was, and I always get these dates wrong because a lot of it is a little bit of a blur, but I was very young. It was like second or third grade. And I went to school in New Brunswick for the first time. Well, not the first time, but I went to school one day. And me and my boy Jaja were walking through the hall because in New Brunswick they had breakfast. So we were walking to the lunchroom to go get breakfast. And all of a sudden there was this guy that went in between these two garbage cans. And he picked up something in the middle of those garbage cans. And it was a long knife. Why that was just sitting there on the ground, I have no idea. But again, this is some of the things you encounter and experience when you grow up in neighborhoods like this that maybe, you know, certain people may not understand or really fully appreciate because they've never seen these type of things. But he picked up a knife and immediately started lunging at us. So me and my boy turned around and we ran. Luckily for me, my house was right up, my mother's apartment was right around the corner, and I ran all the way home that morning and crying and told my mother what happened. And she looked at me, and the only thing I remember her saying is, "Don't worry, I'll never send you back to that school again." So very shortly after that, my mother, while her and my sister were still, and I were still living in New Brunswick in those conditions, she decided to use my aunt's address to send me to school in a suburban neighborhood, which was South Brunswick, New Jersey. And ironically enough, South Brunswick is one of the larger towns in my district now. So I'm excited about getting out there and, you know, reconnecting with my roots out there and everything, which I've been doing a little bit. I was with the South Brunswick Republican Club giving a speech about 2 weeks ago, you know, with Tonya and everybody. So that was awesome. I definitely want to thank them. But she used her address. So I started going to a school, elementary school called Brunswick Acres. And, you know, the funny thing is, one of the reasons I know school choice works because I remember my teacher's name from that school, Mrs. Wells, you know, in first and second, Mrs. Taylor third. I remember nobody from the schools in, you know, New Brunswick when I was going through all those traumatic experiences. So just that alone let me know there's definitely something different about this. As I was going to that school, I don't want to give you an exact time, maybe a year or two later, they ended up approaching my mother and basically saying, we've gotten phone calls, we've been watching you, and we know your son doesn't actually reside in the town of South Brunswick. So you have two choices. Either you can take your son out of this school right now, and because we know he had a problem at his particular school in New Brunswick, we will let him go to any school of his choice, which nobody got to do. You know, school choice is so important that in New Brunswick, places like that, you can live in a 1-mile block radius and still go to a different elementary school than, you know, your friend that lives 2 blocks down because it was just so segregated that immensely in New Brunswick. So they said either you can, you know, send them to any school or you continue to go here and we will take you to court and basically sue you for everything you got and, you know, bring you up on all the charges associated with doing something like this. So it was a very serious offense. So obviously my mother, you know, being a single mother, not really having much, you know, I'm sure she didn't want to go through that whole debacle of going to court and things like that. So she pulled us out of the school and she had them send us to somewhere called Woodrow Wilson. I got to go to Woodrow Wilson in New Brunswick, which is over here on Route 18 by the movie theaters over here. To make a long story short, you know, we went to that school for a while. It was okay. I didn't get any knives pulled on me, but there was a clear difference, you know, from where we were going before. I went from South Brunswick, where we were going on class field trips every couple of months, to, you know, going to the Poconos in 6th grade. We would go spend a night in the Poconos and go cross country skiing. Never heard of this stuff. I didn't know what cross country skiing was, you know, where I was from. So seeing all those things, you know, having a lot of white friends, had some black friends there, everybody getting along and not really having to deal with race, because mind you, and a lot of people I don't think pay enough attention to this, before I actually went to that school in South Brunswick, not that I had never met a white person, but I wasn't really around white people like that, you know, like it was just black and Spanish people where I'm from. So, you know, that was a whole new world to me, even going over there. And you had heard so many things, but it was nothing like what people were telling me. I never had any problems with race, no problems with the parents. I was sleeping over my friend's house, white, black, or brown, whatever the case is. And we really just didn't have to worry about those things. So she actually put us in that school and realized that even that school wasn't the education that she wanted for us. That wasn't, you know, the opportunity that she wanted for us. And she wanted to expand our minds. She's seen what we had done in places like in South Brunswick in that short time. So what she did was she picked up everything in the hood, in the new apartments in New Brunswick, and moved to the poorest part of South Brunswick, right next to the trailer park out there, to the poorest part of that suburban town. So me and my sister could go back to school. I ended up finishing out at Brunswick Acres, going to the middle school Crossroads out there. My sister went to Brunswick Acres and upper elementary. So, you know, that was really probably one of the most important and significant events to happen in my life, to really push me in a direction that I'm going in now, where I want to bring that joy and that relief to others in communities like that, because not everybody that's in that community wants to live that way. Some people just don't have the resources. They don't have the choices. So when it comes to, my policy of school choice and being deadly serious about that, it's a real thing because I've lived it. I've been through it. I see how it works. And as I said, you just have examples of just the access that they have in places like South Brunswick as compared to, somewhere like New Brunswick. So for me, school choice means letting the parents decide, what works for their kids' education, how they want their kids to be educated, and how important that education is to them and their family. And that means if you're going to a failing school like Lord Sterling, and I don't know if it's still failing to this day, honestly, but I would imagine it's not much better than what it is. But if you're going to a failing school and you have parents that are active in your life, working hard and want better for you, that parent should be able to take that money associated with that kid, because as we know, every kid in New Jersey, every state has a price tag associated to them when it comes to school and the cost we pay for that schooling. And in New Jersey, we actually pay the most per pupil of any state in the entire country. So it's a very big problem here, which is why we see such high property taxes. And we can go into a litany of different things, but that parent should be able to take that money associated with them and do one of a couple of things: either send them to a different school district, send them to a private school, send them to a parochial school, or whatever, or homeschool that child, whatever they feel, and I think you see an awakening now where a lot of people, where pre-pandemic, about 3% of Black parents were homeschooling their kids. As of today, we have over 16% of those same families homeschooling their kids. So there is a shift. I think school choice for Republicans, especially not just in New Jersey, is a winning message. It's a message that crosses party lines. It's not just Republicans that want it. It's independents, it's Democrats, and people are sick of being told that their only choice is to send their kids to failing, violent schools at the end of the day. And we want to make sure we make a difference in that regard.
Okay, great. Wow. So you really have a humble background with, it was a tough beginning, right? But you
Yeah.
went through that. You had a strong mother that kind of, made sure that you guys, started off right. Because I think the education is key, right? A lot of people, like you said, don't want to live in those kind of, inner cities where there's violent crime and drugs. But all they need is that opportunity, right? And
Yeah.
that opportunity came in the form of a, better education, right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, I've pinpointed education as the biggest and quickest thing we can do to save generations.
Right.
And when I say save generations, we've been losing them generation after generation after generation. My story is one story, but imagine all the kids that stayed in that school. I was just one of 500 kids in that school that were stuck in those conditions, that had to keep going through, PTSD almost every day, being in a school like that. I'll never forget. It wasn't just New Brunswick. My mother, as I got a little bit older, I got a little bit out of hand. Again, I wasn't with my father. I never knew him. And my mother couldn't always handle me. So she sent me out to Newark, New Jersey to live with my pastor. And I'll never forget the first day I walked into that school, Velsburg Middle School. The first thing I saw was, I got to the top of the steps and I saw a girl run up behind a guy and stab him in his neck with a plastic fork. That was the first thing I saw the first day I went there. And by the time I got to class, and my mother asked me about this a lot, I always tell her, like, it reminded me of, I don't know if you've seen the movie Dangerous Minds, right? Well, Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yep.
Right. And the Gangster Paradise song. Well, when she first comes in, it's just people like spitting spitballs, legs on the desk, sitting on the chairs, not respecting the teacher. That's how it was every day in Velsburg Middle School when I went there. And for the people that we have in power now, people like my opponent that's been there since 2016 in the House and in the Assembly way before that, to have all these. Well, before I say that, there's one important thing about this that I like to tell people that I think we don't shed enough light on. In almost all of these school districts, in almost all of these communities, it's nothing but Democrats up and down. Whether you look at the school board, whether you look at the mayorship, whether you look at their city council, it's all Democrats nonstop, up and down, as their elected officials that are pretty much either contributing to this, or, unconsciously letting this happen. Well, we can't even call it unconsciously because we know they're conscious. We know they see it every day. They got to walk through it every day, except those that, decide to run outside their district and don't actually live in these towns and, just like to preside over them. But, this is a Democratic, institutional problem, to be honest with you. The public school system is one of the biggest systematically racist organizations left in this country. And again, it's not just the whole public school system, because in New Brunswick, for instance, You got that school system. You hear what happened to me. But when I moved to South Brunswick, it's not like I went to a private school. I still went to a public school in South Brunswick. They just had a different leadership. They just had a different type of people at the helm of that city that actually did a good job for the constituents and actually care about the welfare and the education of the kids within that system. And that's something that's sorely lacking in a lot of these urban, democratically run towns. And it's something that in the year 2021, and especially going into 2022, we need to make sure we make a lot of noise about, and because people are ready to wake up, and make sure we let them know they have options. But when we go in there with those options, we have to show them heart, we have to show them empathy, and we have to show them that we truly care. And I think getting on programs like yours, connecting with people like yourself, because I've been around the NJGOP this last year, and I know there's a lot of people that care about these issues. We just have to go out there, you know, in one accord with one voice and make sure they know that we actually care. And I think you're going to see some resounding victories over these next couple of years because of messages like school choice.
Okay, great. Yeah, so you mentioned that like in these urban neighborhoods, right? Like in District 12, I mean up here in District 9, which comprises of like Patterson, right? It's like the same situation, right?
Yep.
In these urban neighborhoods, the situation doesn't seem to get better, but the people at the helm are all Democrats and they keep winning, right? Year after year. So why do you think that happens? Like, how do they keep winning if the situation keeps getting worse?
Yeah, speaking of Patterson, I was just talking to Billy not too long ago, and that whole report came out where these guys were eating like molded food, and like what is going on out there in places like Patterson? I mean, if I was a parent in these towns, I mean, and I know if you were too, there would be hell to pay. You know, I'd be organizing rallies. I'd be up there in the principal's office. Like, what is going on? And it just seems like we've come to such a slumber in some of these neighborhoods where, you know, I think it's a case of a lot of different things. You know, some of the fight is gone. And some of the people, they've been beaten down so much, especially mentally and obviously physically within their conditions. People have been trained to be dependent. And, you know, we see how easy it is, especially Americans that are so free and privileged. We see even throughout this pandemic, how easily it is to lead people, right? And to propagate them and have people, you know, just in unison following something that may not be, you know, for their best interest because they just don't have all the facts or the knowledge about it or whatever the case is. So we know this happens a lot. We know it's a science that they've obviously perfected, especially within the Democratic Party, you know, and they've used their minions over the years to even dissuade people that are like me, that, you know, really stood up and really cared, came from these same conditions and, you know, actually cared about the things we were speaking about. And the way they did that was by, you know, calling them Uncle Toms, you know, coons, you know, just pretty much separating from them for the people. You know, they like to use phrases like, you're not invited to the Black cookout. Right. Honestly, you know, to be honest with you, when I see some of the things that, you know, some of the people in that community believe and, you know, some of the things they keep letting themselves be pushed into, you know, a lot of us nowadays are saying we don't necessarily want to come to that cookout. We might create our own, you know, a much more intelligent one that actually uplifts our people and actually celebrates the successes of people. You know, I heard recently from someone that one of the attacks, if she even deems me worthy, we'll see how it goes. But one of the attacks from Bonnie Watson Coleman might be that I'm a white boy, right? Like, because I talk articulately and, you know, I can express myself. And, you know, that should tell people in those communities everything you need to know. Because basically, if they were to do that, and by somebody saying that, basically they're saying, in order for me to represent you, I need you to be stupid. You're not allowed to sound smart. You're not allowed to be articulate. Because the more articulate, the more intelligent you are, the more you'll realize that I'm bamboozling you every time I get up on the stage and talk to you, right? So I think it's just been a lot of propaganda over the years. I think it's been a lot of making, you know, we always talk about this thing, culture in the Black community. And, you know, unfortunately, they are right when they say that a lot of Americans, especially younger Americans, follow our culture. They follow hip hop culture. They follow Black culture. You know, before, you know, country music used to be the most consumed, you know, music in America. Now hip hop is the most consumed music in the entire world. Right. And, you know, unfortunately, one of the bad things about that is part of that culture, deeply rooted in that culture, are a lot of negative things that are praised. And unfortunately, because of our education system, because people have been dumbed down so much, they don't have the critical thinking skills to even separate, you know, entertainment and music from real life. Now, even when you look at the rap music, they have something called drill music now. So I remember when Tupac and Biggie and Jay, all the people I was listening to, they used to rap. We used to all talk about how, yeah, maybe they did some of those things. They sold drugs before and stuff like that, but they're not doing it now. They'd be stupid to. They're making millions of dollars. They're on Disney. They're on this. And that was really the case for a lot of these guys. They were smart enough to overcome those things, and they were just pretty much telling stories about where they came. But with the sensation of drill music and hip hop now, it's all about doing the real thing. It's all about rapping about what you talk about. So these guys are literally going out there shooting somebody, jumping on a record and talking about exactly who they shot. They're also talking about, rolling their ashes up in blunts and smoking hookah and things like that, actually smoking the ashes of the people they've just murdered. You see a lot of people in hip hop either getting murdered or locked up nowadays. And a lot of that comes from that culture of just taking things that really the rest of society, normal people would deem bad, negative, things worthy of being locked up in jail for or excoriated from society, to bringing it into this culture and almost making it cool. Whether somebody talking about date raping a woman, somebody talking about kidnapping somebody or killing somebody. So we just have this culture that's just being perpetuated throughout all these communities, and it's become a lot bigger than that now. And you have it where nobody wants to snitch nowadays. I've talked about this before. If somebody kills my sister in front of me and I see who you are, I'm not going to be afraid to give the cops an exact description of who you are, nor should somebody living in Chicago, nor should somebody living in Newark, New Jersey. But what's happened is, and this is probably the saddest part, I saw this during the Donald Trump administration. And when he came out and he said two things, he said, one, Baltimore, it's filthy. It's full of garbage, which is absolutely true. Right. And he came out and said, Chicago, it's a slum. People are being killed and gunned down left and right. The media came on immediately. Black Democrat leaders came on immediately and excoriated from that, called it racist, called it a dog whistle. You know who wasn't doing that in every situation? And I know this because I'm looking on the Facebooks, I'm watching the video. The old grandma living in Chicago, the old auntie living in Baltimore, who said, he's absolutely right. This place is atrocious. How could they let us live like this? And in Chicago, the lady was like, we're scared to come out of our houses. Can you please send in the feds? Let President Trump say something like send in the feds. You would have thought the Nazis were about to, invade Chicago in this sense. But now what do we have? We have the mayor of Chicago actually asking the Joe Biden administration to send in the feds now. Yeah. She actually just did something where she's proposing now where you can actually sue gang members. The city can sue gang members and things like this. But during the Trump administration, while thousands of people were being shot, they didn't want to talk about these things. So that's why we stay in these situations that we're in, because at the end of the day,
coming from the same party that wants to push the defund the police movement, right? So it's
it's all that.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that the mayor of San Francisco the other day also came out, and all of a sudden she was very pro, police. So,
and in New York City, when that first started, the whole defunding thing, the black bishops and ministries had to come out like a week later and said, I think we made a mistake. We need to, we're with the police. That should have just been common sense. And you know what? Listen, we're adults at the end of the day. For you to be an elected official, for you to be a religious leader, for you not to have been able to think this through and understand those things, it's unacceptable. Because like Bill Clinton with the 94 crime bill, he wants to apologize about those things now, right? Now everybody's apologizing, pulling back. But guess what? The murder's already happening. The raping's already happening. Yep. Those things have already spiked in these communities, but now they want to come back and apologize. What we need to do is get rid of these people, start electing real regular Americans that are not afraid to stand up against these things, and make sure we have people that change them this time, rather than doing things, experimenting with things, and having to come back and apologize later when it was really just common sense in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you look at Mayor Bloomberg, right, when he was mayor of New York City, he implemented the stop and frisk plan, and it worked, right? The crime rates went down, but when he ran for president, I think in 2020, right, he was apologizing for that.
Well, I'll tell you this. So I'm never the type of candidate you're going to see come down on the same side of everything. I can understand when it came to stop and frisk. I think Giuliani did a better job of, he was really, the leftover of what Giuliani had already done. Right. But, when it came to Bloomberg, he's a little bit of a, what's the word? I can't think of the word right now, but he's not such a great guy, to be honest with you. Okay. But when he did that, I will never forget that. I was actually with Saudi and my fiance, and because we have a consulting company, and we used to do fashion shows, everything in New York City. So we did a lot of those, and we had a fashion show in Harlem. And I'll never forget that we ended up on the train in the subway in Harlem. We came up, and as we were coming up, we saw like just a line of cops just stopping all these kids, just frisking them and everything like that. And I got to say, every single guy in that line, because it was pretty much all guys. I don't think I remember any girls. Was black and brown people. So I can understand why some in the minority community would definitely, kind of take a little bit of offense to that, because it can turn into a little bit of a negative in that way when you start actually pointing out certain groups of people and going after certain groups of people. So there has to be a little bit of a happy medium. So I'm happy to hear people like Eric Adams announce that he's going to put those 700 officers back on the streets, the division that de Blasio dismantled. So I think we need to do more things like that. Just, putting people on the streets, plainclothes officers on the street. We need to go into these communities and start encouraging these, the law-abiding citizens of those communities, to let them know that they are protected. Because the part of the problem you have is a lot of the people that the majority of the people in this community obey the law, right? You got those aunties, those uncles, those kids going to school. The overwhelming majority obey the law. It's a very minute minority of people that are actually out there doing these things. So we need to empower those people in those communities to understand that if you have problems, we're here with you to deal with those problems. We're not going to let people intimidate you. We're not going to let them threaten you, because that's what's happening in a lot of these things. And people are just afraid to come forward at this point, because they're afraid if they come out and say anything, their families are going to be targeted. So I'm glad that Eric Adams, somebody like him, is putting those officers back on the street, because the people, the law-abiding citizens of these towns need that support. They need that respect. And we also need to go in there, which is things I like to help with Beat We Black Blue and places like that, to encourage these people to actually start instituting programs to encourage the youth to become law enforcement of their own towns, to become firemen, become federal officers, whatever it is. We really need to get back to that and start inspiring these kids to be all you can be, rather than just being what you see on your street corner when you come out your house.
Yeah. Now, Darius, was running for office, getting involved in politics, something that you've always wanted to get into?
I guess in some way. I often tell people when I was younger, especially in South Brunswick, in that 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, my mother used to ask me and my sister every day when we came home from school, like clockwork, what do you want to be when you grow up? And my answer every time was President of the United States. I don't know why. I think I just had a little bit of political inclination back then from everything. It's so funny because they say we need to teach CRT and things like that in our schools because we don't teach history properly. But the reason I wanted to be a president is because I got taught those things, in South Brunswick. I got taught about slavery. I got taught about Jim Crow. I got taught about our presidents. I got taught about all that stuff. So when I hear people making this argument that we don't get taught those things, it's just like more of that democratic utopia where fact is fiction and fiction is fact, and everything is backwards, and we don't deal with the reality of what's really happening.
They want to erase history, which actually is the biggest mistake that we can ever do. If you look at the history of other countries, right? Those that erase their history are prone to make those same mistakes again and again. Darius, so right now you are running for Congress. This is your first run for office, right?
Yes.
Okay. Why Congress?
So Congress, I just felt like, one, it was the right time. A lot of people know me from being a Trump Republican. I was a very, very big supporter of the president over the last 4 or 5 months. I'm sorry, 4 or 5 years, not 5 months. And, people know that about me. So I got involved with people like Priscilla doing the podcast, getting involved in the grassroots movements in New Jersey, and everything else political, from being at CPAC to all the other stuff that it's brought since I've thrown my hat in and since I've gotten so connected politically. So for me, it was a strategic calculation. I believe, as I think we're seeing right now, and I've been saying this from the beginning, that I believe that Republicans have the issue, and right now there's no better time than now for any Republican to run because of the energy and because of somebody like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, which are the two gifts that keep on giving. There's really not much that I'll have to say, and I could probably win, I could probably garner up 5 or 6 more points than the last guy that ran for this office just because Joe Biden is president right now and he's doing such an awful job. And it's not just Republicans that actually see that. I also had some influences by people like Billy Prempe, who ran last time around, and I got to know him pretty well while he was running. Did a cleanup with him, had him on the podcast, and we just became really good friends. And seeing what he did, getting the most votes as a Republican before, that really, inspired me out there. And just seeing what he did, really inspired me in that way. And just looking at my district, although I think some of the more politically inclined people would like to say, well, he has no chance in this district and things like that. Well, I just look at what the gentleman that did before, Mr. Mark Rizzoli did. I look at what I'm doing now and how much more active I am out there in not only the political world, but just the even the media world of it, the Hollywood side of it, just being out there with those people and, hobnobbing with, some of the party leaders and things like that. And, really being able to bring my networking skills to this political world. So I calculated, with somebody like him getting 32% of the vote, obviously I'm a Black conservative, so there's naturally going to be an interest from not just Black Republicans, but Black people in this district in general, where I could probably get 3 to 6% more of the vote just from Black people, 3 to 6% of that vote, just because I am a Black man running, and because I run on a lot of issues that do cross party lines. And I think just some of the stuff that we have set up, I can tell you that my fundraising so far has been astronomical compared to, recent years, where, we were looking at other opponents raising, a few thousand, $10,000, where we just hit the $140,000 mark in, about 7-8 months here. So for me, all those things are very telling for me that I made the right choice. I jumped in at the right time, and there is no better time than now for me to do this. And seeing people like Lynn Patton come speak at my fundraiser, who was in the Trump administration, Kim Klacik, sitting down with Karen, talking to Sebastian Gorka, all these people, and them all encouraging me and seeing what I'm doing and liking what I'm doing, reaching out for support and things like that, just lets me know I'm definitely in the right lane. I made the right calculation. And even though I don't think this is going to be a walk in the park by any stretch of the imagination, I think I am the right candidate at the right time to really put some fear into the other side and hopefully get this win.
Okay. Now, speaking of your district, as you mentioned, right, the last candidate to run against Bonnie Watson Coleman got around 30% of the vote, right?
Yeah.
Aside from being a Black American, right, and getting all this energy, what else do you plan on doing to try to kind of level the playing field? Because I think we spoke on this, and you said that your district is like Democrat plus 15, right? It's like a D plus 15 district, right? So there's obviously a lot of ground to make up. So what other what ideas do you have, or plans do you have to try to help you win?
Yeah, well, the good thing is, I guess one of the good things is, what we saw over this last election in 2020, that Republican turnout all over the state was up. Democratic turnout was stagnant. That goes for this district. That goes for all the districts. Republican turnout was up. And that's because a lot of what we did, a lot of this younger generation, a lot of this grassroots is getting the energy out there and just getting people excited. Last time around in last year's election during our presidential year, they got about 340,000 votes in this district. Now, 2 years before that, when it was an off year like it is now on the midterms, they got 150,000 less votes than that. It's only like 154,000 people voted here. There's more than 600,000 voters right here in this district alone. So you can see how there's a lot of room for improvement in that way. Now, we also know that when it comes to Republicans, the lower voter turnout, the better we do. Right. So we're going on an off year. We're going into the midterm. So, naturally, Democrats are going to be de-energized. They might get a little energized for somebody like me because, they come down and they're like, yo, this is a Black Trump supporter. Get out. They start going crazy on me. So I'm expecting for them to come out a little bit. But, so I think that's going to help us. One, the fact that it's an off year and people are already excited in New Jersey as far as Republicans are concerned. After this last election, you got the Republican Party getting more interested in what's happening in these congressional races. So I'm sure we're going to get fed some resources. But the biggest thing to me is, one, voter turnout. So it's waking up Republican voters in this district, because before the year 2000, it was all Republicans that held this seat. Bonnie Watson Coleman and Democrats didn't hold this seat. Before 2000, it was all Republicans. So Republicans are here. We just have to wake them up. The other thing I plan on doing is going straight to her backyard. You know, Bonnie resides in, I believe, Ewing right now, and her stronghold is in Trenton, where she has an office and stuff like that. Well, again, that's why I said I think I'm the perfect candidate at the perfect time to actually jump in, because you have a Black candidate in myself that is not only not afraid to go to these areas and really go out there and, you know, canvas and phone bank and do events, but you have somebody that literally comes from these same conditions. So I actually feel comfortable in these places, right? So there's never going to be any pushback for me going into these areas. And every time I go out there, which we've done some canvassing in Plainfield already, we've done some canvassing in Trenton, New Jersey already. Every time I go out there and I start talking about my platform, people are wild and they all agree with what I'm saying, you know, because again, I'm speaking a universal message. They all agree with not Black, not white American. They all consider themselves Americans, and they just want the same opportunities, the same resources as the town 5 minutes down the road, you know. So as I start going in these communities and really punching through that message, because it was one of the craziest things I saw when I was doing Philadelphia cleanups. I went to Philadelphia. As I'm driving there, I'll be in one town is the richest, cleanest, most pristine town you've ever seen in your life. About 5 minutes down the road, they literally call it Philadelphia, where there's nothing but trash. The same thing in New Jersey, in South Jersey. You go out to Patterson, where you guys are, you see all this crime and everything like that. You go 10 minutes up the road to West New York, it looks like West Hollywood, you know? And I think people nowadays are smart enough and, you know, determined enough to actually understand those things and understand what's happening, you know, and what has happened to their town now, as opposed to before, where it really was just like, oh, nah, he's a coon against his own people. I'm against my own people. I come from exactly where you come from, went through the same things, pulled myself up out of bootstrap, you know, went through all those things to becoming very successful in business at doing those things. So I think they look at me as an example. I'm somebody that can actually go in there and have some credibility and connect with these people. And right now, what we're planning is we got a couple of really big fundraisers planned over the next couple of months. I plan to start going to Trenton and doing town halls in Trenton, New Jersey. And I want to bring out the Republican Party, because it's not just about me going in there. Now people want to see that Republicans are serious. Okay, you got a candidate. You got a guy, he's pretty articulate. You know, we think he's pretty dressed well. You think he looks great. He got the look. So, but now what are you going to do? Right? Are you going to actually just put this guy up there and he's just going to talk a bunch of, I see people online already calling me a grifter and things like that. I'm just like, it just lets me know how out of touch most people are when it comes to this political world. Because I literally was in a career where I gave up a career where I was making more money than I would be making if I do win this congressional seat next year. So as far as me being a grifter, I mean, that doesn't make sense, downgrading my, you know, my salary to do this. And obviously, as I told you, I got a couple of businesses that we're opening now, but those businesses are just starting off. So for like the last 7-8 months, I'm not really earning an income. I've been campaigning and out here doing things, you know, for the people in that sense.
For the viewers who are watching now, what types of businesses are you, you know, part of?
Yeah, me and my, I come from the automotive industry. I was lastly the general manager of Manhattan Volkswagen, general sales manager of Rydell Volkswagen in Edison, New Jersey. So I've been in the automotive industry since I was 17 years old. My cousin and his wife decided to put some backing behind us because they both come from the automotive industry. Her being a financial manager for BMW for 20 years, her husband being a general manager for places like Hyundai, Ford, things of that sort. So we actually started a company called Mayfield Enterprises, and Mayfield Enterprises basically dabbles into a lot of stuff like we do, whether it's automotive, whether it's homes, whether it's businesses, whatever it is. So the first business we started off of Mayfield Enterprises was Mayfield Motors, which is a used car lot, which we just, thank God, Phil Murphy actually signed the license for us. We just got it 2 weeks ago. It took us 7 months to get that license. We applied for it earlier this year, had to go through a lot of different steps, get the location, everything like that. But we were literally just got approved like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So we got our first couple of cars on the lot. So we have Mayfield Motors, which we'll be doing our grand opening probably sometime in early March. We also just put down a deposit to, we just got a building for a bakery that we're opening in Somerville, about a half a mile down the road from our car dealership called Dolce's. And we are in the middle of right now, hopefully, fingers crossed, closing a deal. I won't say where it is or anything like that, where we'll be opening up a Vietnamese restaurant as well near here. So My cousins have been really supportive. They're really supportive of my campaign. They love what I'm doing. They live in my district, have a lot of influence in the Somerset area. So I couldn't be more appreciative to them as well. And me and his son are just opening these businesses, buying real estate, opening up bakeries, restaurants, whatever it is we can do. And having that support with like a 4-man and woman team while I'm running is invaluable to me, because it gives me the flexibility to still doing what I'm doing politically, but also start to build a future that's going to span generations at the same time.
Perfect. All right, we got a comment here. Well, we actually have a lot of comments. First comment here from Diana in regards to your talk before about the school choice, right? Could not agree more. My mother always said, one thing no one can take away from you is education, and it is something you will do in life that you will never forget, or never regret. Yep. We got a comment here from Bezo, who, by the way, is my biggest fan. I always say this. He's 92 years old. He watches my show every single week. Love watching the show. All the guests you have on, they are my type of candidates who should be elected to make a big difference for our state. That's right. From Astro Filippo, who actually ran for assembly in District 38 this time. He's a great guy. I, at this time, do not know much about you. I understand you have never held public office, so I ask what you can do for not only the state but for the country as well. It concerns me, and I am sure others, that so many from New Jersey are running for capital position and have no experience at it. I guess that's what he's trying to say. Okay, so I guess what will you do, not just for New Jersey but for the country, Darius?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you got at one point or another, everybody had no experience, right? I mean, it can't get much better. It can't get much worse, I'm sorry, than somebody like AOC, who's in there now, who had no experience. And, she's becoming quite powerful on the other side of the aisle, to be honest with you. The good thing for me is, again, I come from a business background. I've ran multi-million-dollar dealerships. I've been, again, running dealerships. I became the youngest sales manager ever in a top 25 auto group at the age of 19 years old. I've been in the car business since the age of 17. I became the first Black general manager, again, of Manhattan Volkswagen. 3-4 years ago. So I've been quite accomplished in the business world myself. Myself and my fiance own a couple of small businesses, consulting services. And again, right now I'm also building up a couple of businesses. So I say that is, I know that's not political experience, but at the same time, I have a lot of life experience. I have a lot of business experience. People forget that, our forefathers created the Congress to be the closest chamber to the people. They wanted farmers, they wanted doctors, they wanted, teachers, regular people running for the office of congressmen and congresswomen, because they wanted to make sure that chamber always connected to the people. So what I can bring for you is common sense. And that's why a vote for Darius is a vote for America and common sense at the end of the day. I'm not an extremist. I'm not about separating people. Again, I come from the freest generation to ever walk this earth. I come from a generation of people where I didn't have to deal with this racist talk every single day on our media or in our everyday lives. We're looking to start injecting that back into our politics, because the average American isn't racist. This is not an inherently racist country. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had the first man of color. I don't like to call him a Black president, but the first president of color, elected to the highest office of the land. So what I bring is just a sensibility, a common sense to our politics, as I told Ron before, where I don't just fall on every, the same side of every line just because I'm a conservative or just because I'm a Republican. In fact, I was one of the few people that supported somebody like Van Drew for voting for the infrastructure bill, which I have said publicly that I would have personally voted for, not the Build Back Better plan, but the infrastructure bill that was negotiated primarily strictly by our Senate Republican leaders. And that's why somebody like Van Drew, who I'll actually be meeting with this week, I'm really looking forward to. We got some exciting stuff coming up with that, so stay tuned for that. But I'm supportive of that, because I don't need to. I'm about getting things done for the people. I understood in that infrastructure bill, we got things done like replacing the pipelines in places like Flint, Michigan, to finally get all the lead out of their pipes. Something that was brought to light under somebody like President Barack Obama, who, again, as a Democratic leader, claimed to care so much about the Black and brown community, yet let things like this just run rampant and never really had a fix for it, while record numbers of people were being killed in the city of Chicago, where he claims as his home, even though he wasn't born there, but is claimed as his home. So, I'm about looking at things the way they are, not playing political games. I think a lot of the constituents and a lot of people get wrapped up in the political games that our leaders play, not understanding that, like with anything, like you're watching a TV show, it's not real. You know, a lot of these guys behind the scenes are friends, as we've seen even on the state level. You know, they chummy it up. They split the districts amongst their stuff. Like, they're speaking for us, the people. They don't speak for us. One of the problems they have with people like me in this generation is, again, we were the freest generation to ever be born. We don't know what not to say. We go forward like we want to. We speak as we want to. We just keep it real with you, and we just speak the truth, and we don't know any better. So I think that can only benefit people like himself, not having that political experience. And obviously having a deep business background will keep me grounded and level-headed in a way where I can navigate myself through this world. I can adapt and have different relationships and make sure I'm networking the right way, all while maintaining my specific goals in mind, and at the end of the day, keeping my morals and my values intact and representing you, the people. So I just promise to go in there and do a good job for you guys. And listen, if AOC can do it, I promise I can do 1,000 times better.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, if AOC can win, then I think that gives hope to everybody, right? But you know,
100%.
one thing that I do want to say is that, you know, sometimes having the political experience is not the end all be all, right? Having the political experience doesn't mean that you can do a good job, right? You look at our president, the one before the one we have now, Donald Trump, no experience in the political world, right?
Yeah.
Goes to become president, and I would say is probably the best president that we will have in our lifetimes, right? I mean, he did so much in those 4 short years, right? He did more in those 4 years than most people do in like 40 years.
Exactly.
So sometimes having the political experience could be good, but in today's world, you know, we have these career politicians, right, that do nothing for the people. So that experience doesn't necessarily translate a, you know, good
Well,
thing.
we also see it's not like there's going to be a wave of people that never ran for office. It's not like in, you know, December next year, you're going to have 100% of people in the House of Representatives that have never been in politics. That's probably not what we're looking for either. But what I can tell you is, like business, right? Sometimes it comes down to hiring the best people, having the right people around you. And one thing I can promise is, listen, as your congressman, I'm not proficient in, you know, writing the best, you know, legislation, right? I'm not proficient in this and that, but what I can promise you is that I will surround myself with the people of different opinions, because just like in my business career, I always had different opinion people around. You never want to hear one side of the story. I want to hear it all and make my own conclusions drawn on that. I do the same thing when I read my news, because I don't watch cable news anymore. I think a lot of it's entertainment, but I do read a lot. So I'll read a CNN article, I'll read a Fox News article, I'll read an OAN article, I'll read an Al Jazeera article, whatever it is. So I can get things from a lot of different sources and make the most intelligent, common sense decision at the end of the day. So what I can say, kind of like what President Trump said, is I will always, and I'm working on things like that right now. I have an incredible team around me of researchers and different people that are just volunteering for the campaign in a lot of cases, that do some amazing things. One of them is the president of one of the largest, Down syndrome organizations on the East Coast and things of that sort. You know, I know very professional people. I come from a very professional world. I know some very accomplished people that are getting behind me like, listen, we know your character. We know who you are. We know what you're capable of. And we think you're the one to really go in there and make a difference for all of us. So I promise you, I forget the gentleman's name, I will surround myself with the people in the positions that need to be had in order to make the best decisions and in order to represent my constituents in the best possible light all the time.
Okay, great. Another comment here from Ramon. Election integrity is a main priority that many people remain in question because many are worried and is becoming discouraged. That causes them not to vote, and people have a right to know. So what are your thoughts on this comment?
Yeah. First of all, and people know this about me, not voting is probably one of the, sorry for my language, one of the stupidest things any of us can do. All right. People need to stop saying that. You need to vote. You guys all know that I'm all about election integrity. Especially in the 2020 election and the presidential election, I know we were 100% mail-in balloting. And, of course, I know, a lot of us think there were some nefarious things done in that. And we've seen some of them outwardly. We've seen them, Democrats, defy a judge's orders in places like Pennsylvania. When it came to these things actually happened. Again, I'm not about living in fantasy world. We actually seen these things happen. We've seen the reports of people burning ballots in places like Patterson, being indicted now for doing that. And we saw all this stuff. Now, fortunately for us in 2021, most states, including New Jersey, went back to in-person voting. So that's one win, right? Because we didn't want to stay in, although we'll see how they do this year, because we hear things of them trying to shut down and go back to that, but we'll see what happens. But we had in-person voting. So one, what we need to do is we need to stay vigilant. I know places in like North Jersey, like the Morristown chapter of the Republican Club, they were cleaning their voter rolls and doing things of that sort. We need to make sure that's an organized effort around the state. I know the RNC has picked us as one of the states. They want to help and make sure they're looking into some of these claims. We also need to be careful about the claims that we make and not just throw things out there, because by doing that, you actually make it harder on people like myself that is an America first, Trumpican, Republican, that should never be a question, but sometimes when, some people in our base say certain things and act certain ways, you make it harder on us, to try to defend those things. One thing, I absolutely think probably the most important things we need to do, which is two things. One, I would like to see if if mail-in balloting is here to stay, I like to know the results before we do in-person voting, right? So that morning or whatever the case is, we should know what the results of that mail-in provisional balloting is, so we can just kind of take that out of people's minds, so they don't even have to sit here and question if you're counting ballots overnight, did you do that lawfully or whatever the case is, right? So we should definitely get something on the books to make sure that happens. Eventually, I would love to see that happen. We need to make sure that the laws are being followed, especially with poll watchers, people watching the vote tally and things like that. We shouldn't have these situations where Republicans are being removed from the premises or Democrats or vice versa. So we should definitely have those things under control. But one of the most important thing I think Republicans can do is, as I was telling you guys before, 344,000 people voted in the 2020 elections here in District 12, right? With over 600,000 registered voters in this district. Why are we not training Republicans to be good at the mail-in game as well, right? There's a lot of Republicans that we know aren't voting, whether they're just staying home, they don't want to go to the polls. Some Republicans even don't want to go out because of COVID. This is not a problem that's just unique to Democrats. A lot of Republicans got vaccinated. I know a lot of Republicans that got vaccinated. So I know we like to sit here sometimes and think this is just a Democratic issue. It's not. And that's where the nonsense needs to stop. And we need to understand that's why it's not black, not white, American. There are nuances to this. It's not just a Democratic thing. It's not just a Republican thing. So we need to get on our game as far as, one, registering voters and making sure people, especially those that maybe want to vote but just haven't voted over the last few years for whatever reason, are aware of the mail-in balloting rules, how it works, making sure they get a ballot, and we can play that same game with Democrats where we're sending in tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of ballots as well. And until that time, we need to stay vigilant. We need to stay supporting America First candidates, even if they're not talking about every issue you want them to at every time, because we do need to be smart in the way we move forward and we approach things. But just understand, especially myself, I am an America First candidate. I do believe in election integrity. I do believe in photo IDs for voting. And if you guys elect me to the Congress, I will make sure I fight hard and push for those things and work with our New Jersey legislator to make sure we can get those things done on the state level as well.
Okay, very quickly, Darius, top 3 things you want to accomplish once you get into Congress. I know that school choice is, up there. What are 2 more items?
So 2 more items will really just be bringing that sentiment around everybody and really being not black, not white, American, not Republican, not Democrat, American. I believe in people over party, people over politics. So just really galvanizing the troops on all sides of the aisle to bring regular, everyday people together to say, you know what? I may not agree with that, he said, but this guy's speaking the truth. And I do agree with that. That's a very good policy. And we would love to see that happen. Just people open their minds, having a little bit more critical thinking about things, and not necessarily just voting because you're a registered Democrat or Republican, being more independent in those ways and understanding the person that's standing in front of you and understanding exactly what they're saying to you and how it will benefit you and exactly what they want to do. And, I would say thirdly, probably just being known as a person that's all about love, love, respect, honor, no matter who you are, no matter what color you are, what religion you are, what party you're from. I'm a man that cares about all people. I want to see all Americans progress in their everyday life. And, for them to be able to show their kids better and give them more opportunities than we had. And if I can say one more, I
Sure.
would like to leave an impact on the communities like the ones that I come from. And part of doing that is my which we'll get into later in the campaign, is economic equality, not economic equity, which is way different. Economic equality. And by doing that, I want to take things like the hoods of New Brunswick, where people have been displaced because of mainly white liberals coming in and gentrifying their neighborhoods. I want to make sure we devise a plan where these neighborhoods, people have the opportunity to stay in these neighborhoods, buy back their neighborhoods, grow in their neighborhoods, and pass generational wealth onto their family and their family's family. So I definitely want to be known for helping out in a big way and progressing communities like the ones that I come from. Humble beginnings.
Great. Well, thank you, Darius Mayfield. I've thrown up your website here for people who may want to check out your website to learn more about your platform and about your background. So it's Darius Mayfield for America. And you also have a podcast, right? Not Black, Not White American, right? So that's the website for your podcast, Not Black, Not White American.com. And I believe you air those every Sunday night at 8 p.m., right? So it's going to be my main competition, right?
Yeah. Listen, his show is live, so you guys can listen to his and then you can listen to ours afterward. It's all good.
All right. Well, Darius, I want to thank you so much for coming on today. I know you have a busy schedule. You're running for Congress, so it's always busy, right? But anyway, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and I wish you the best of luck in your campaign. And we hope to have you back on very soon, okay?
Absolutely. You just let me know anytime, man, and we'll be back on. And congratulations to you and your wife again, man. And let's go kick some butt in 2022 for your new son.
Let's do it. All right, Darius.
Yes, sir.
Good night, okay, buddy?
All right. Good night, brother.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so that was Mr. Darius Mayfield. You can check out his website, DariusMayfieldForAmerica.com. You can also check out his podcast, Not Black, Not White American.com. One more comment here. Oh, but Darius left already. But this is a comment from Preeti Patel. Excellent job, Darius Mayfield. You got my vote. All right. You know, I don't live in Darius's district, but if I did, he would also have my vote. Anyway, guys, I want to thank you for joining me tonight. It is December 26th, 2021. And you were watching Real Talk with Ronnie live. We'll be back next week, next Sunday, with a very, very big and special guest. I don't know if I should give you a little hint about who the guest will be. Should I? I don't know. Okay, fine. Our guest next week will be... I like to call him the Dragon Slayer. All right. He is the guy that went against all odds to take down the most powerful Democrat in this state. His name is Senator Ed Durr. Senator Ed Durr will be on our show next Sunday night live at 8 p.m. So tell your family, tell your friends, tell everybody that you know to tune in next Sunday. It's going to be a blockbuster show, and we're so excited to have him on. I want to thank Darius Mayfield for coming on. He's a great friend. We wish him the best of luck. If you want to come on my show, please feel free to email me. Okay. You can email our show at realtalkwithronnie@gmail.com. If you feel you have a great story, if you think you would be a good subject, right? Please contact us. In the meantime, you can watch us live every Sunday night from our Facebook page. Okay. www.facebook.com/Real Talk with Ronnie. You can go to our Facebook page. You can go to our YouTube channel, right? We have a YouTube channel. So you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are streaming live both to YouTube and to Facebook. We got a few more comments here. Peter, my great friend Peter. Good job informing which districts does he cover. Okay. The districts that Darius covers is in District 12. Okay, so Congressional District 12. I believe that's part of like New Brunswick, Princeton, in that area. All right. Okay, so I want to thank you guys for joining me tonight. I want to thank all the people who gave great comments, asked great questions, and we will see you all next week for our blockbuster. Awesome show. Okay, guys. So I want to thank you for joining me tonight, and I will see you all next Sunday, 8 p.m. live. All right. So Merry Christmas. Oh, and by next Sunday, it will be 2022. So let me wish you a happy new year in advance. Okay. Happy New Year. 2021 has been a great year, an interesting year. It's given me a lot. It's taught me a lot. But onwards and upwards in 2022. All right, guys. I want to thank you and have a great, great night.